Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact, where business insight meets startup innovation. And now, your host, Brian Sparks and Lisa Helfrich.
They are here. Yes, welcome to Silicon Valley Impact on Pirate Cat Radio, KPCR 92.9 FM in Los Gatos and beyond. What you're about to hear is...
God, they love you, Brian.
Yeah, I know. They just can't calm down.
They just absolutely love you every single week.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Mom, by the way. All right. What you're about to hear is edited for radio. I'm your host, Brian Sparks, and this is my co-host, Lisa Helfrich. Lisa, hello from Canada. Good to see you. Yes.
Yeah, the snow is here in Canada, everybody.
Is it?
Sunny.
Nice.
Kind of feels like California. A little bit.
Yes. All right. Well, the purpose of this show is to have an honest conversation about what it takes to build a great business and community so that you can make an impact within your own. Today, we have two amazing guests. But before we get to them, Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Founders Lab and Movement 51, because you have a great cohort going on up there in Canada that is making an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. For those tuning in for the first time, I'm an executive coach. I coach a lot of different leaders, a lot of founders, and have a pretty strong passion for supporting women in leadership and female founders. And I've been working recently with the Movement 51, which is an incredible non-for-profit here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And they brought together 20 women from across Canada about a month ago. And over the course of the next few months, they're going to be learning everything it takes to build a successful business. Lindsey, you'll appreciate this, how to do term sheets, how to negotiate deals, how to raise capital. And then, in kind of my land, all about human capital, right? About founder fit, how to really be the best leader, how to really build, the tone and the culture that, really comes from your heart for your organization. So I had a really incredible session with them last week and this week, and excited to see them pitch at Demo Day in June. So really charged up on that. It's been great.
Yeah, exciting. And I want to remind everybody, join us every fourth Tuesday when we have Marianne Becker here, who is leading the charge with women in leadership, women in tech. Just a great episode having her here. That's every fourth Tuesday. She's joining us and again, bringing in amazing women. But we have two amazing women with us here today. However, before we move on, I want to thank Blacey's Vault of Los Gatos. Jeanette is a big supporter of ours, and we can't say enough about her support and Blacey's Vault of Los Gatos. So once again, go to blaceys.com. They're amazing, and they'll help you out with all their fine jewelry. So let's just move on. All right, so we have two.
Who's on the show today?
Yes, thank you. I'm stuttering. I'm just learning English today. So today we have Lindsey Mignano. Lindsey, good to see you. And we also have Loriana Sardar. Loriana, good to see you.
Hi.
Hi. Lindsey, I'm going to start with you first, and then Loriana, I'm going to pitch it to you. Tell our millions and millions of fans a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsey Mignano. I'm a co-founder of a women-owned corporate law firm called SSM. We're based here, most of us are here in San Francisco, but we also have attorneys in Seattle, Los Angeles, and San Diego. So we're predominantly a West Coast firm. Our primary bread and butter is emerging companies, venture capital, and M&A. It has since expanded as we've grown from 3 people to about, 17 people now, to include other areas like privacy, products, coverage, patents, and tax. And so it's ever evolving. I'm one of the original founders. We started this in 2016. Happy to be here. Thank you for having
and that's
me.
a quick scale up. That's a quick acceleration. And we're going to jump in how you did that to grow. Was it 3 locations you said?
So Seattle was our second. Then my law partner had moved down to San Diego, so we started building that area up. And now we just have 3 in LA. And in LA, it's downtown, Irvine, and Santa Monica.
Amazing. So, I got to pick your brain on how you did that. That's great. Sure. In 2016, that's a quick acceleration. Loriana, introduce yourself a little bit and give us a little background on you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Loriana Sardar, and I'm a co-founder of Rexalto. We have developed an AI dynamic pricing engine for the vehicle rental industry. So basically, we help car rental companies, mobility companies to get the right price for every given customer. that's in short.
I love it. And again, we'll go a little bit
Yeah.
further into that in a little bit, but this isn't your first company.
No, it's my second company. My first company I founded in 2014, and it happened to become now one of the largest European car sharing companies.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, it's very cool. I mean, you're going to hear a great story, but we'll come back to you in a little bit, Loriana. But again, I want to thank you, and we're going to ask questions of each other. So we're going to open this up. But I want to start with you, Lindsey. You graduated from a little known school here in Palo Alto. Some of you may have heard of Stanford, and you decided to go into law. What is kind of your background building up going into schooling? What made you want to become an attorney? Why did you pick that particular field? Where does your passions lie? That foundation that makes you so dynamic today.
And I wish I could tell you it was super intentional, and it was in some respect. But I was a feminist studies major at Stanford, which means that there were like 7 people who chose that major in my graduating class. My focus was women's health and reproduction and policy around that, and I had a real strong interest in that. But of course, I had parents who were like, "What is next for you? Are you going to business school or law school or medical school?" And and that was kind of the inertia of 2007 in my life. And so I had been always better at reading, writing, articulating, public speaking than I was at math or science. I'm horrible at math or science. Like,
We're family.
it's embarrassing.
Yeah, we're family.
And so law school seemed like a really great fit. And so I went to Hastings, or the law school formerly known as Hastings in San Francisco, because I wanted to stay local. And kind of got inculcated in that scene of entrepreneurship and technology. Not that Stanford didn't have that. In fact, a lot of my Stanford classmates are in adjacent industries: venture, private equity, iBanking, other lawyers, a lot of founders. So it was always kind of just something in the Valley and in SF that was just always around me. And that's very different from where I grew up in Hawaii. I grew up in, a small town called Kahala. I went to a little known private school. It's not Punahou. Everyone, it's Iolani. It was the rival school. And
Shout out to Iolani.
yeah, there you go. But my sisters went to Punahou, so we're a family divided.
Oh,
But we had no tech scene there. And when I came over to California in 2003 for school, this was my first foray into that environment. And I'm really happy to be here. And I don't think I could do what I do anywhere else in the country.
so to that point about graduating with these unique minors and majors, and there's 7 people around you doing the same thing, and then you're going to go into law. Was it just, I'm going to try this kind of thing? Or is it like, no, it's always been in the back of your head?
It was always in the back of my head because, little known fact, there was a woman, when I was junior miss for the state of Hawaii at age 18, my coach was a woman named Corliss Chang, who was a very prominent lawyer. Auntie Corliss, if you're ever listening, this is a shout out to you. Very prominent litigator in Honolulu, and she was coaching me when I went from junior miss in Hawaii to junior miss like in the U.S. And a lot of that coaching kind of, really inspired me because she was just such a powerhouse in the Honolulu legal scene. And she still is. She's also she has broken off from a big law firm and now she owns her own firm. So I was very inspired by her journey. And she went to Harvard, and I think she stayed for Harvard Law School as well. And that's how I kind of got it in my head that I thought being a lawyer would be a really fun, or hardworking, but a fun opportunity.
Now, Brian, Lisa, there's a common denominator between those who come to us in the show, and it's mentorship. They have someone in their life that has kind of been that guiding post for them moving forward. Loriana, just to get you to chime in, any mentors in your life?
I actually had one. That was my second boss, I guess. I was living back then in Russia, and I was working for a telecom company, and he was an American guy who came to Russia, studied Russian, and became head of legal in that firm, and he was my boss. So he inspired me so much and showed me that a big boss can actually be a very, very kind-hearted person and put your interests first. So that gave me an example of what kind of person and manager I want to be in the future.
Yeah, I can't say it enough.
Jeff McGee.
Definitely. Yeah. Shout out to, because you know, everyone's listening to us. Jeff's
Yeah.
definitely gonna be listening. I say, okay, so Lindsey, you're in law school, you're at Hastings, you passed the bar, you choose now a particular field of study.
Mhm.
Why the choice to go into where you're at now?
So, I think there was a gap year that no one really asks me about. And I'll tell you now, in 2010, we were still really recovering from the 2008 recession, and a lot of law firms went under, and I had an offer that had been revoked. And I worked at a very small startup. I was the fourth employee, and I had done it because I needed to make money. And at the time, I had no legal positions were open for me. So I was hired to do a sales job. And it was a technology startup here in Mountain View called Watchdocs. It had since gotten acquired, and very nice exit for those founders. But I was the fourth one, and I did sales for a year before my parents came knocking and said, "You need to take the bar." But I killed. I really liked sales. I really liked technology sales. The founders were great, and I'm actually still very best friends with my then boss, who does sales and taught me everything I know about sales at Intel. He's very high up. His name is Ron Espiritu, and we're still very close friends. I would say that kind of got me interested in tech more than anything else that I studied in law, because what you learn in law school does not prepare you to be a good lawyer. It's just the mechanics of, what to do. But once you're there has to be some organic interest in it. And I think I got it from working at a startup in my gap year before taking the bar and moving on to my legal career.
So there's the intersection of study and passion. In order to apply effectively, you need to have the art of applying the law or defending the law, or what?
I think it gave me a really, because it was a 4-person at the time company when I joined, it gave me a really like an insight into what early stage companies, even those who have received some funding, because they had received funding, but it gave me an insight, like, what is their day to day? How do they struggle? What are the pain points? What's the practicality of a lawyer? And they had a big law firm suggesting all these things legally for them to do, but it wasn't practical, it wasn't cost effective, and it wasn't something they were actually going to do. And so that was a really important year for me to watch that, because I got to see it up close. There were only, at one point, 4 of us. I was the 4th employee. So I got to see a lot of that behind the scenes, and that absolutely informs how I advise my clients today. Just knowing what the intricacies are of that stage of a company.
So the intricacies that you talk about is a unique perspective that you have, because you have the law side and you have now the startup perspective. You're in it. It's not objective. You're not your viewer. It's very subjective. You're very much in it. What are some of the high level takeaways from that experience? And if I might go so far to say, now that you're in law, what are kind of the, from both those perspectives, the best takeaways that a startup could learn from you about?
So
Is that too deep? Should I have slowed that down a little? Okay.
I got you.
Right.
I think I would have 2 pieces of advice, and one specific to foreign founders, because we deal with a lot of foreign founders here at SSM. My particular practice involves flipping foreign companies, so international companies, as they approach venture financing here in the US, because venture capital has so much of a preference for investing, at least at the early stage, in a Delaware C Corp, in an American parent. And so a lot of my work is a flip and a raise. And I would say for those foreign founders who are even considering that as a possibility, you should know that owning a Delaware corporation doesn't require you to be a citizen or resident here. It doesn't even require you necessarily to live here. Although if you really want to seek venture capital here, you do need some boots on the ground. And the flip is an incredibly expensive procedure. I think it's done sometimes prematurely. I've seen a lot of companies who come to us and ask us to help flip their companies, but the real cost can be like $150,000 at a very early stage, with lawyers abroad, lawyers here, the international CPA valuation firm, and the transfer pricing analysis, and all these things. It's really not cost effective until the money, whether it's Series Seed, and I would place that at like 4 to 6 million, or Series A, 10 plus million, makes a lot of sense, right? So that's my advice for foreign founders. I say it a lot. I'm the only lawyer who will tell you, please don't spend that money with me. Let's see if we can find a workaround. And then my second advice is for all founders, but American or foreign, is be really careful in choosing your co-founder. For women founders, your chance, unfortunately, in the way of the patriarchy, is like something like less than 2%, 1.7 or 1.9% of getting, venture funding. Like if you look at all the companies that are venture funded, 1.7 or 1.9 goes of that amount goes to women who are solo founders or all female teams. That number jumps to like 24-25% when you have like a man in the room. It apparently is the elephant in the room. And I do think that anecdotally and statistically, at least what I've seen, is that 2 to 3 person multi-founder teams tend to get the best traction with venture. So I guess, what this kind of spurs statistically and anecdotally is that you have a founder who might be a solo founder who's rushing to find a co-founder. And there's going to be like a lot of conversations and not good fits. And I try to counsel my solo founders to be careful about this, because 1/3 of our practice area is also founder divorce. And that's hairy and expensive and really heartbreaking. If anything, it's more heartbreaking to watch, people separate in a really hard way. And so I try to tell founders, if they are solo founders or if they are maybe even a 2-person team looking to bring on another person, to be real careful and choose someone that they really, really do trust, and make those legal documents work for the company such that if they were to leave prematurely, they don't leave with fully vested shares, for example.
Or the technology.
Can I jump in on that for a sec? Is there any advice that you would give to co-founders then? Yes, choosing the right person is very good advice, and that's important, but you can't necessarily know everything up front. So along the way, have you seen anybody implement steps and practices that help to avoid the divorce?
So what we tell our founders to do, if they will, pay for it. So obviously all these startups are going to incorporate, and it's usually Clerky or Stripe Atlas, or even through our firm, they can do that. And they're going to be getting restricted stock subject to a 4-1 vesting schedule. Some founders will say, I don't want my shares to vest. I want all of us to have fully vested shares. Great. Now you've created a problem amongst each other, where if one of you stops working, they do leave with 30% of the company, and there is nothing you can do to compel them to sell back those shares. So a 4-1 vesting schedule, which is very common in Silicon Valley, it's less common in other parts of the world, is actually not only protection for investors, but it's in protection for founders vis-a-vis each other. And the second thing that we have them do is we have them create offer letters. The president CEO generally oversees all the other officers like CFO, CTO, COO, CSO. Setting up those structures and those commands of power in place with duties, responsibilities, time commitments, everything, and putting it in writing and have people sign it. Even if those duties change or the time commitments change in the future, it sets an expectation at the very onset of what everyone is supposed to be doing. I do think that founders who skip that step of actually coming into a room together because the lawyer made them and talking with each other about, here's what I'm doing, and here's what you're doing, and here's who is so-and-so reporting to, and here's the time commitment. All those conversations, actually, there's, times when people are like, actually, I don't want to do this. And now we've avoided a messy, expensive founder divorce simply by having those, what I would call prenuptial conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Great question. So what was the third? You were gonna close up with the third of.
Oh, I guess if I was going to give one more, I would say, can you please turn in your 83B elections timely? This is one thing that happens with founders who receive vesting shares, as you should, for one, through Clerky or Stripe Atlas. There's a 30-day window to turn in those 83B elections. If you don't, we have to do a synthetic 83B. It's, more cost when it's really just so easy to walk to the post office and just stamp that thing and put it on in. So those would be my top 3.
I'm totally nerding out here on all the jargon. I just love it.
I know it's good.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question. So you kind of gave the legal perspective, what you learned, kind of looking back in hindsight. Shift a little bit to the mindset. What does a heart of a great startup founder look like? What are those personality qualities? What are those qualities of resilience, tenacity, patience, leadership, vulnerability? What stand out to you?
The ability to execute, I think, is going to be the one that I would say is the most the strongest predictor of success. I think we have a lot of founders who are dreamers, who have a great idea but have no understanding of how to execute to make that profitable, nonetheless revenue positive. And so figuring out the business plan of like, okay, so you have a great piece of technology or a great SaaS or a great PaaS. How do you go to market? How do you make sure that when that venture firm invests in you, the market is, your share of the market is big enough to make you attractive for that? And that, you've carefully thought out your business model. We have a lot of startups who come to us with that kind of half-baked. They're like, the technology is amazing. And I'm like, okay, so how are we selling this? Like, how does this, how is your subscription model going to work? Like, how are you going to get to the 500 to $1 million ARR in order to justify a serious Series seed, or the 3 to 4 million ARR to justify a really healthy 10 million plus Series A? We need these numbers. We need these partnerships in place. We need that deployment. How are you going to do that? And that problem of essentially finding partners and execution is something that I think we see a lot of founders fail on, because you can have a really great idea, but if you can't take it to market and if you can't execute to get that ARR, it's very unlikely that, especially in this economy, you're going to get funded.
So talk a little bit about the state of venture finance.
Yeah.
There's a dividing perspective on it at this point. Some think, no, now is the time. Others say, no, I'm going to hold back. I'm going to watch. What is your take on it? You've done a lot of talks around this.
I do. I that's the one thing that people ask me to come in talking about. So what we're seeing in the early stage, at least, and I will say our firm generally serves early stage clients. So pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B. So we're going to be kind of in that world. We've seen less of an impact than big law firms who serve, for example, Series C and D, and going towards IPO types of technology companies. So we have been, as a firm, and our clients have been at the early stage less impacted by this essential pullback since 2021. We've still seen numbers very healthfully coming in at Series C at 3 to 4 million, Series A at maybe 6 to 10 million, a slight dip in that Series A number. I would always say that 10 million is a very healthy market in California and New York. Having, some clients come in with like 6 or 7 is a little lower. But generally speaking, they're not as poorly impacted as Series B going to C or C going to D. And so we've been relatively hopeful for them in that respect. But I will say, I do think that if money is going out at the Series Seed or Series A level, you're seeing this be repeat founders who have already exited something else, who are starting something new, and they're asking their insider VCs who already funded their last company to reinvest in this one, or invest in this one for a first round at 4 million or 5 million, right? And they're getting, the money. It's not being given to everyone anymore. It's given to the select few, and it's usually founders who have already had experience in startup land, who have already exited, teams who have already worked together before, so that the investors have de-risked that founder fallout concern, and people who already have a pretty strong product market fit and go to business strategy, right? Like go to market strategy, whether that's an enterprise SaaS subscription model or a B2B to C model. They have it locked down. They know what they're charging. They can show you in theory how it all works out 6 to 12 months from now. And I say in theory because that always changes, but they do have thought there. And that is who I think the is getting funding right now at the early stage in this climate. It's not just everyone. And I will say that with a caveat, because it was, I think last year, $1 in $4 that went to AI companies, especially AI SaaS companies. And we saw a lot of movement in that direction. I still think we still have a little bit of momentum from that, but I'm seeing more cautious investing in AI right now.
So I have a question. This may go off into the weeds, but and by the way, those of you who are listening to this on the radio, I suggest you go back on the podcast and re-listen to what Lindsey just said. That was golden in terms of what to look for. But okay, so what I hear you saying is that having access to capital is really depending on your network and previous success that lies on your team. However, you have over here, which we talked about earlier, you have these women founders who are getting in the game for the first time. How do we bring that closer together?
it is such a problem in Silicon Valley because when you are looking at repeat founders, the fact of the matter statistically is they are going to be men. They're going to be usually white, South Asian, or East Asian men, at least in San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley. And they're getting, they're repeat founders. So of course they're going to get, the funding. And what's really hard for women founders, aside from the fact that the stats are 1.7 to 1.9%, is that they are not necessarily repeat founders. And my female founders, as a women-owned firm, you would think that we would have a lot of female founders. On my docket, I maybe have 5 active female technology founders. Every other client of mine is a male or a mixed gender team. Mm-hmm. And it is really hard for solo female founders who have not already had an exit in terms of like both, pitching to VCs who will take calls with them who are not, especially if they're not insiders or there's not a Nepo baby situation. It's really hard. And I try my best to connect them with the VCs that we have on our docket that have funded our other clients. We've got a list of maybe 40 to 60 in LA, San Diego, San Francisco, and Seattle that we have across our lawyer network from our firm. And we definitely do blast their decks and, give as much introductions as possible. If there is a warm introduction requested by the VC, we try as hard as we can. But the stats are the stats, and it's still really disheartening to watch.
So from a creative perspective, if it's just you and me talking right here, what is the leap? Like what can we do creatively to make the leap? We have the stats, we have the traditional plays, partnerships, things of that. What would be, I don't know, what would be the risk for somebody to take to maybe close that gap? I don't know. Maybe that's not even a good question, but
I really think it's going to have to come from more women who are GPs in funds. I do think that as the venture industry matures, and the legal industry, by the way, has the same problem. If you look at women in law firms over 1,000 people, the chances of you making partner are, as a white woman, is a certain number. I think in 2016 when I left to start my own firm, it was like 5%, and it was like 3.5% if you were an Asian woman, and less than that if you were a Black woman or a Latina woman. And so the technology venture industry still has that same problem where the GPs tend to be male. But what if we solve that problem where the funders are actually female and female, people of color? And I think that's going to be what needs to happen. I think it needs to be a top-down change in the same way that for the legal industry to change, the clients who hire those law firms need to demand equity, right?
So it's really a strategic go-to-market play, right? I mean, if I could, and almost in order to get in the game, you have to have a roundabout strategy. I mean, I know as an executive communication coach, in order to kind of work with the 1%, you can't just go right in. I've had to build a community. I've had to work in the industry, fell into radio. Now it's like you're kind of coming around to it. And you're saying that the best path at this point, creatively, if we're just kind of chatting about strategy, is for them to go through the GP route, develop those connections, and then...
Well, I'm saying from a societal standpoint, we need more female and people of color GPs in venture funds. That's going to change because women are more likely to invest in other women, right? And so there's that issue. There's also an issue of we need more women who are in, and I'm guilty of this because I did not do this, in high school and in college who are entering into STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, math. Because if you look at the funding, where it goes and what companies it goes to, and what verticals might be insulated from the most impact of a recession, verticals like fintech or, well, that's not really a great one, but life sciences or biotech or medical device. These are all hard sciences, right? AI can also be a very hard science, AI, AR, XR, depending on the technology. If we don't have enough women in high school in STEM who are not going to college and majoring in things like STEM, we don't have enough founders who actually can build companies that are going to be fundable. I think that a lot of female founders do what's called CPG, consumer products and goods, and they make companies with products or services that they would want to buy. And that does make sense logically, right? Like you've solved your own problem, right? As a mother, and there's money in that. Absolutely. There's still money in CPG in some parts of the country. And there are venture funds generally owned by women that invest in that type of company. But there are far more Bay Area venture capital firms or Seattle venture capital firms that invest in hard science and enterprise SaaS. And if you don't have the technical background to create that company, the problem is you're never going to get funded, right? And you're going to create a company that may not be really a venture fundable company. You're going to create a CPG company that's really a small business. And that's okay too, but that's just not where the money is.
Can I get philosophical here for a second? You're saying in high school the women need to get into STEM, but I think that we would need to take that back several
absolutely.
steps, right? This is small children who are being prepped to get into high school, to get into STEM. If I can get philosophical for a second, what do you see in society or in the family unit that needs to change that would help to kind of redirect some of those young women who might be interested but somehow still feel that there's a barrier to entry or some resistance on behalf of society to going that direction by the time they get to high school?
And I think you're right, because if you look at, even people in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco area, look at all these private schools, these groomer schools that you're starting kids at Hamlin or Burke at like $50,000 annual tuition. And of course, those parents might encourage their kids to get into the math and the science fields. And there's quite a lot of resources there. I think, in the public school system, you might have less resources towards math and science and that level of math and science just by basic funding, unless there's obviously a parent fundraise. I think, what I have seen my friends, and I'm 39, so I have a number of friends who do have young children. I think mothers encouraging their daughters to go into hard sciences, especially when they themselves may have never gone into hard sciences. Statistically, they have not, is something that we need more of, because we can't choose founders who are women if there's no one lining up at the gate, right?
Mhm.
Because they're not forming technical companies, because they don't have the background to do so. Or maybe they have an idea, but now they have to find a CTO. Statistically, in that case, a female CEO with a great idea on an AI enterprise company, but she can't execute because she doesn't have the technical knowledge to build out that PaaS or SaaS, that's going to cost her 35 to 45% of her equity in that company when she brings on that. Usually it's a guy, CTO, to help build it. It's an expensive endeavor. And so, having more women who major in the sciences is truly going to be something that we have to start at from scratch. And I think we have more of those programs like Girls in Tech.
Yeah.
We have that now, but we didn't have that in like the 80s and 90s when I was growing up.
But I think this is due in part to people like you guys here today and some of the women that we've had on the show previously who are still young and now finally breaking that glass ceiling and leading by example and being on a show like this where younger women maybe get a chance to have role models that possibly just didn't exist, I guess, in such great numbers before.
Well, even as a father of an 8-year-old, encouraging what direction my daughter to take or what non-traditional routes to take, I think is valuable for all of us to listen to. So all you men listening out there who have daughters, listen to this and take heed.
Don't buy them the princess books. Buy them the Ada the Scientist.
Yeah, I'll stay away from the Play-Doh. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So
Or science sets, right? Like things that they can actually get their hands on and build, and right, like you would buy. I mean, when I was a kid, it was an erector set, or we had electronic sets and things. I don't know that the women or the young women, girls, got those things.
Not in the 80s. I never received.
And I don't know that they're getting them today.
I just bought one for my daughter, which is a computer set for a 6-year-old, and she's 4.5.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
okay, I got to
Yeah.
change my parenting. Okay, thanks guys. Really appreciate that. It's something-
The more you know.
Yeah, we're all talking to you, Brian. This is all here for you. This is an intervention.
All right, well, Lindsey, that was amazing. Let's welcome in once again Loriana Sardar. Loriana, jump in on this conversation.
Brian, can we take just a quick break, just a quick break before we go into that? Before
Yeah,
we
let's do it.
change
Let's take a
gears?
quick little break.
Yeah. You want to give station identification? Where are we?
We're KPCR 92.9 FM in Los Gatos
And beyond.
and beyond. All right, so we're back again. Loriana, jump in on this. We're talking about how startups should think. Talk a little bit about your company, where you're at, some of the things that you've learned. Reintroduce us to what you are doing, what you're working on. Talk a little bit about Rexalto.
Sure. Before I go into that, I'd like to thank you, Lindsay. A lot of what you said, you saw I was like nodding a lot, really resonate with my journey, being a female founder, fundraising for the last 10 years and building 2 tech startups. So I'm with you on most of what you said. So at Rexalto, we, before I go into that, let me say where I come from because it will make more sense. So I was back in my 20-something years old. I was working in financial institutions, in telecom companies, never thinking to become an entrepreneur. And actually was kind of avoiding when people asked me, "Do you want to be one?" I was like, "No, I want to have a good life, work-life balance, all that kind of things." And then I moved to Italy to do my master's degree in fashion experience and design. So that's basically management in fashion industry. As I was studying, I realized I don't want to work in fashion industry. And the other thing that I realized that I started to be interested in doing something on my own. And as I lived there, a new business model appeared in Milan in 2013, which was a free-floating car sharing. And being a passionate driver, I said, like, this is amazing. Like, I can go wherever I want. I don't have to take care of the vehicle, etc., etc. So I took the business model, went back to Russia, and launched the company together with my co-founders, 2 other female co-founders. And we were bootstrapping for 3 years, lobbying it to the city government, fundraising throughout these 3 years, trying to fundraise. We didn't raise, so spending our money to pay salaries to the team. And I personally had about 250 in-person meetings with investors, where I literally, at the end of the meeting, I felt they just wanted to see who are these 3 crazy girls who are talking about car sharing that never existed in the country, and they're telling it's a great potential. And it was just kind of an entertainment for them. So car sharing didn't exist in Russia before we brought it. And now Moscow is by far the biggest city in the world in terms of car sharing. There are just in one city, there are 35,000 cars. And we managed to build the company to 75 ARR and become cash flow positive, which is a very rare thing in mobility in general, as we all unfortunately know, and especially in car sharing. So when I moved to US, together with one of my co-founders and a guy co-founder, we decided to do something together, and we decided to basically share what we did best, our knowledge and experience with other first mobility companies. And that was dynamic pricing, because the best way to drive your revenue, to improve your revenue, is to, like, going back to microeconomics, supply demand, to find the right spot when you will maximize your return. So we started building it and doing it just for the mobility companies. But then as we looked further, we realized that there is a huge elephant, a giant, which is the car rental industry, which has not been almost untouched. So the way they do pricing is quite outdated. So we said, let's focus on 2 industries, which are very similar. It's rental of vehicles. So now we do dynamic pricing for the rental companies and for mobility companies.
So, upon first look, the leap from interest in fashion to cars is kind of a wide gap. What was your experience with cars, and did you wait until you had enough information, or there was just an opportunity and you leaped in and figured out as you went along?
I had first of all, I was always passionate about cars. So when I was 16, and in Russia you can drive when you're 17, I started learning how to drive to make sure that when I turned 18, I can start driving. At the age of 19, I participated in street racing, which my parents still don't know about.
They do now.
Interesting.
They might come to know now, yeah. So I was always spending most of my salary on paying loan on the car and getting a new car. So when I moved to Italy, I was actually suffering for not having a car, because I'm used to I like traveling. I like traveling by car. So when car sharing appeared, it literally changed my whole concept of car ownership. I said, like, I don't want to own a car. I hate doing the gas. I hate going to the repair shop. I like driving and I like the freedom. And, it was one of those things when you just we fell in love with the concept, with the business model. I was calling all my friends. I was like, listen, there is this huge, amazing business model that just appeared. Like, I thought it just appeared. And we have to do it. We have to bring it. So I was like really so passionate. I have to tell now, if I knew how much difficult it would be, how complex is the business model. I mean, you have cars spread throughout the city, like thousands of cars spread throughout the city. People that you've never met use them, do weird things to them sometimes. And then you have all kind of issues with like everything. It happened to be a very complex business, and I did cry sometimes over like bad accidents of our customers that we didn't. It was not our fault, but still, like, you get so personal. And yeah, I think what was driving me throughout this journey.
So you essentially just figured it out. It's something you were passionate about, and the knowledge then came.
That's a good question. I see where what you mean. So before, like, when we want to do car sharing, so how to do that? So I actually went to like 5, 6, maybe 7 cities in Europe, trying all the car sharing services, and like picturing all the apps and writing down the customer journey. So none of us was a tech person, like none of the 3 of us. So what we did, we've written a customer journey book, like what we want the service to be for the customer. Then we found a CTO who was at the moment 21 years old. I mean, like we really trusted in him. He's a superstar. And we gave him this book with like, this is what it should be for the customer. He loved it. Like, he was like, I have to keep it as a souvenir. I've never seen something like that. However, they kind of used it as like what the front end should look like, and they have developed the back end.
So let me get this straight. So you immersed yourself in the customer experience, wrote essentially a book on it, and then engineered the product.
Yeah.
That is so counterintuitive, but yet that's what we've been talking about for the last 4 weeks here. It's not so much having a good idea and getting it in front of the right people. It's understanding the people and then building the product.
And that's actually where I think women, I don't want to sound sexist, are stronger.
Empathetic.
Because men, they're more about technology, the product, and women more focus on the like how the consumer would feel. Like, is it like safe? What are your concerns, etc., etc. So we were like really focused on the customer perspective, and also like we could have easily taken any solution that was out there, software solution, and just use that. But we tested them all, like literally like all that were available at the moment. We said like, they're not good. Like we don't like that. We want to build something that would be really good. And until now, I strongly believe we have built one of the best solutions, and that was like supported by many other companies. Yeah.
And how did you leave the state of that company? Did you exit, or is it?
Before I get into that, I wanted to say what Lindsey was talking about divorcing with the founders. I went through that a few years back, and that I have to say, I got divorced with my first husband, and I got this divorce, and I can relate why you say it's as difficult and as painful as divorcing your life partner. And we did use lawyers to do that, because like you don't know what are the legal consequences and everything. However, we left our co-founder with the share in the company, because she has committed and brought a lot to the firm. But I did learn a lot from that. And now, like what you were saying, the advice that you were saying, I used it in this company. I said, like, we're all 4-year vesting to make sure that if somebody leaves, if I decide to leave, I don't get all my shares because I didn't commit fully enough to make the company successful. So for that for the other company in Russia, it's I still own a share there because I mean it's not easy to sell something in Russia, but there is a team who's managing it, and they've been there for like 5 to 10 years.
Mm. So what I'm hearing is oftentimes the exit is just as difficult as the startup.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Lindsay, you're shaking your head as well. You want to?
Yeah, I will say our firm, because we represent early stage companies, this happens quite a bit, and it really happens in tough economic times. You know how they say divorce, it could be cheating or it could be money. That's the top two reasons. Lack of money is one of the top reasons when I see co-founders start to not get along, right? When they're running out of their runway, or you know, they're financially pressured in some ways, and someone's not showing up and doing what they were supposed to do. And it's really hard. And we are normally the side of the company counsel. We're hired by usually the president CEO, and we report to the president CEO. But watching that fight go down, you know, between president, CEO, and CTO or CFO, and being, you know, that person in the room who has to say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I've known you for 5 years, but you need to find alternative counsel. I am not your counsel, I'm company counsel. But still seeing all the emotionality that goes along with it, it can be very draining. And I have one person at the firm who tends to do a lot of like the dispute resolution, even when we mean the best, when there is a 4-1 vesting schedule and there were offer letters with everyone's duties, you know, spelled out. It's not foolproof like anything else,
Had all
right?
that. It's still
It's
tough.
still
It's
difficult.
still
like
tough.
it's a divorce. Like
Yeah. And despite all
Lindsay,
of that,
wouldn't you agree also, though, that the arrival of money can be equally taxing on teams, right? As soon as money starts to flow, that people get a little wonky too?
I would agree.
Yeah, and actually, I have a question with that that's aligned. You know, what I've seen work well is what are those kind of base salary performance bumps that might be tied to, it could be funding or what have you, that are equitable as well for the entire team. Have you seen that?
Yeah. So, you know what I think is really great about this day and age and being a corporate lawyer in this day and age is that there is so much data out there in terms of how the C-level suite is compensated. So, as lawyers, we have access to a thing called Carta Total Comp, and I'm just plugging Carta. But Sequoia also has its own access to that data. And you can see by region and the amount of funding exactly how much equity and pay that particular officer might have. Now, obviously, when there is a raise, when there's a big inflection of money, the venture firm, who probably also has that data, will say with the founder, hey, I think I'm going to give you this much money. It's X. In light of X, I think the salary for you should be, and your team should be Y, right? And Y1, Y2, Y3, all across the board. And so there is some discussion of that, obviously. But it is still tied to what's market. And what I love about today's day and age is that there is actually a database of that because of cap table sharing platforms like Pulley or Carta or all these essentially platforms where you're seeing data like salary, equity, all being tracked. And now there is a benchmark. And so we just had a founder the other day who said, hey, what am I going to pay like a mid-level engineer for the size of my company, given my industry? And we were able to look up location, amount of funding, engineer type, all different positions, and hardware, and say, hey, this is what Carta says is the market. I can't tell you, you know, that he will that your mid-level engineer will take that, but it's a starting point for negotiations, and that still works with C-level suite officers as well.
And you know what I especially love about those databases is I know a lot of female founders, you know, who just have equity. They are often, founders in general are often last to pay themselves, right? And I know, especially speaking with female founders, there's a lot of, you know, stress, I guess, around working with their investors to understand what is the right salary to take on and when. So it's incredible to have those databases because they're hopefully taking on more of a salary than they would, you know, give themselves credit for.
So I want to pivot back to Loriana. Loriana, I mean, if it wasn't, you know, hard enough to do one, you just started to do another. Tell us a little bit now more where you're at with Rexalto.
Yeah, that was like I had a discussion with my husband like a year ago, like a year and a half ago. He was like, "Are you sure like you're like ready to start another company straight away, like without giving a 6-month pause, taking a rest?" And I was like, I want to do it now. Like why do I have to wait 6 months to get rest if I have the energy and I have the passion to do it now. So we have developed the product. We did the four months of pilot sales last year, and early this year we did my favorite part of any journey. We did a pivot. So we looked back. We said like, this is working well. This is not working well. How do we restructure it? How do we change our go-to-market? How do we change our product based on what the customer's feedback is? And we have done this, and I'm super excited of what we're doing now, because now I can see a much clearer way how it can boost. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the customer experience, about what Rexalto does.
Mm-hmm.
Unpack that a little bit.
So basically, like our customers are car rental companies and mobility companies. The way we get to them is we first integrate with the software companies that sell software to them. We work on revenue share model, and then they sell us to their end customers. So, and it's a win-win situation. So they're committed to make sure their customers are more successful. They make extra revenue from the existing customer base. We get a good channel who is like selling along with us, and the customer is happy because they get an easy plug-in solution that they can launch within a couple of days. And that was the pivot that I'm very excited about.
How did you figure out your appropriate go-to-market strategy? Who is your customer at this point, and how did you find them to be the right fit, if you have yet?
Yeah, we did. We did talk to all kind of customers, from companies that have 10 cars, literally 10 cars, to Ava's budget group and Get Around and Turo. So we also from different sectors of mobility. We did a few trial sales. We saw how long is the sales process, where it actually blocks or stops. So we did a lot of real-time experimenting, and that's how we realized what bothers them and how we can improve our sales.
So I got a question, and Lindsey, you can chime in at this. Again, when it comes to women founders or women in leadership, here you are immigrating just a few years back from another country. Access. How did you get access to the decision makers that allowed you to get these tests, allows you to get customers? And then Lindsey, when she finishes, I want you to chime in. Like, how can women get more access to these decision makers?
I mean, first you have to be active. There are a lot of opportunities. Yeah, you go pitching. Plus, I come from mobility. I've been in the space for 10 years, like now 10 years. So I had a lot of contacts throughout the world. I was talking at different conferences. I know most of the mobility companies, like their founders or CEOs, a lot of OEMs, etc. So I did reach out to them, and they introduced me and reintroduced me. So that was a word of mouth, and I continue to participate.
So you have to pitch yourself, really. You have to get out. You get out there and you communicate.
I do a lot.
A little plug for a communication coach right there. So, Lindsey, you're a great communicator. Same question: how do those who are just getting into the game get access?
So number one thing that I love about these female-founded venture funds is a lot of them have eliminated the barrier problem from introductions by just having an open, like you can go to their website and apply and send your pitch deck to pitch for them. I really like that. I think that takes away the Nepo baby situation that we do have.
Okay, second time you said Nepo baby. What is that for our viewers and myself?
And me.
It's the guy who went to GSB because his daddy went to GSB and his grandpa went to GSB, and his daddy works in private equity, but his brother works in venture. And he suddenly starts
the legacy
a startup,
member,
right out of GSB, but has no real ability to code or anything, just has an idea and he's kind of a bro. And it works out really well because he already has all the connections at all the venture firms and private equity firms, and even iBanking, having gone to Stanford and GSB and having relatives in the industry. So I think that women venture firms have been really good about recognizing that not everyone has that background, that family background, that educational background, and allowing for people to come direct to them through their websites. And I really applaud that. That's a good way to open it up to especially foreign founders.
I'm just thinking that guy from GSB that you described and kind of rolled your eyes about just a little bit. I don't know, people can't see it, but I'm describing it. But that guy's listening to this and going, oh, that dude sounds like a douche.
Not me. Yeah, not me.
It's based off a live person.
Right. God, I'm glad I don't have to work with that dude.
Well, as radio is and as marketing is, we're running out of time. But before we sound off, Lindsey, I want to thank you. Loriana, I want to thank you. Lindsey, how can people get connected with you?
Sure. Lindsey Mignano, Mignano. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Any of those would work for me.
Nice. And Loriana, how can people get connected with you?
Anything, Facebook, LinkedIn, Loriana Sardar. I'm actually, I think, the only one, Loriana Sardar, with the first name and the last name, so it's easy to find me.
Yeah. And if
Loriana, spell that last name again one more time, please.
It's Sardar.
Perfect. I think we're perfect on time, Brian. Let's.
Lisa, I want to give the mic to you here for a second. If you've got anything that you want to wrap up with, we've got about 30 more seconds.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, just great show today. Great to have you both on. Like, we are on a spree of incredibly talented women on this show. I think we need to keep it going, keep showcasing them. But I think my takeaways today are, I think I'm feeling really excited for my daughter's future. There's so many women like you out there, you know, that they can really see themselves becoming, which, you know, we didn't necessarily have those opportunities, you know, when we were younger. So, you know, excited for her future and excited to see as well the continued growth of both of your companies.
All right. And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Silicon Valley Impact. You can join us here every Tuesday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on 92.9 FM KPCR. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, talk about your startup, or showcase your local business, you can contact me at brian@siliconvalleyimpact.com or reach out to Lisa on LinkedIn. Once again, this radio show was produced by Pirate Cat Radio, KPCR 92.9 FM in Los Gatos. Take care, everybody, and I'll get my English right next time. Good night.
Thank you.